Hasani, this feels like we're at the crux of this, which is how do you balance the well-being of the employee with the productivity needs of the business? And sometimes these things are at odds, and we talked about how leadership can help. How would you go about?
I think it's fascinating that on one hand, the flexibility has transformed so many different lives. I can talk from personal experience. A couple of days a week, I have to do the school run, which happens in the middle of the day. In the old way of working, that would have been impossible. That's just not a suitable way of operating. In today's world, you're right, that does mean, okay, you're working a bit longer into the night, or starting a bit earlier, but you're working around your situation.
So there are trade-offs, but for you, the trade-offs are worth paying. So you're going to be working until 9 or 10 at night, but you get that time back during the day.
I think where business has evolved to is the time is not actually the issue anymore. So the output or the value that you're driving is the actual target. For some of us, yes, we're in jobs and roles that do have a time factor to it. So my call center staff, yes, they have a time that they need to be around to facilitate the service to my customers. But for many people in knowledge work, the time that they're sat at their desk entering data into a keyboard isn't actually not what most of us leaders are focused on. It's, okay, how effective can you be to produce that? And I think that's where technology is enabling that flexibility to enable you to produce your best work at the best time. And I think just piggybacking on John's point on the younger demographic of people coming into the workforce who just have a very different mindset to how they approach work, what they expect, from what Christina talked about, that expectation management that a different demographic have from maybe myself and maybe somebody who's even more mature than myself who's worked from a different generation. They expect that flexibility is as it's. They've got their iPads, they've got their iPhones, they've got their Android phones. They expect to be on call all the time. That is not really a big issue. Whereas for me, it might have been, oh no, I want to be able to segregate this portion of my life as work and this proportion.
And does that get to the heart of it, Cathryn? We often frame this conversation about emerging millennial generation and their needs and their expectations, and that might leave behind people already in the workplace who have very different expectations.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to sort of stereotype and think about sort of one type of employee, and yet actually, we've got a huge diversity of ages and cultures and so forth that we're grappling with, and across culture, international boundaries and so forth. And I think there's some common themes, but there are also differences which we need to respect. So as you say, I think that's a great example of, for some people, that work-life balance and managing that, or indeed structures and systems in an organisation. For some people, they like coming to an office and separating kind of work from home.
And when you talk about structures and systems with a small s rather than
exactly
IT systems.
Exactly right, yes. So for those people, that is helpful in terms of that gives them structure in order to be productive. For other people, it's the opposite. I was interested. I mean, I was reflecting just mentally whilst you were talking. When I first went to work, you just could not work from home because it was believed A, that you would be completely unproductive, skiving, frankly, and B, unless you had something that you could do offline. There was no internet when I started. I am quite old. So it was impossible, but very much frowned upon. So both sort of physical and sort of, psychological barriers to it. Now we understand that actually it aids productivity, and you probably get far more out of your workforce because they're not commuting. They have more opportunity to manage what's important in your life and so forth. Those are big changes.
And I want to come back to the role of technology for good or potentially for ill, and how we mitigate some of the potential problems of this new way of working. But just to pick up on Jim's point around leadership, is there a changing role of leadership in order to deal with these changing workplaces?
Yeah, I'm sure Jim will add to it. But yes, again, if you think about the kind of old style of supervision and control and how you affected that through seeing people physically and all the rest of it, that's gone. You need to find different ways of managing, motivating, empowering, inspiring your workforce. What their expectations are different of you as a leader, not just of the employer generally.
Because after all, we could use the technology to as a form of surveillance to make sure that people are doing the hours they say they're doing, that they're producing the output that they're saying they're doing. But you're, from what I'm hearing, that's probably not the best approach.
No, I think it's about trusting people. I think it's about coaching. It's about mentoring, and very much, people have moved, I think, from even the sort of knowledge working into the learning worker, because people have multiple careers. They need very different skills at a fast pace. And so actually, how do you help people learn as opposed to control the job that they do is, I think, a much better output in today's world. Jim, you might have some views.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think when you look at what leadership could do, I think for me it comes down to kind of empathy and understanding the needs of the associates, right? And understanding the multi-generational aspect of that, and looking more at the production of work rather than the process of their work, right? And with that, they need to be able to provide the right tools for the right people. But I think it's incumbent on many of us to work with senior leadership to say, these are the benefits, this is the return, if we can get these tools, if we can hire, like for example, if we're looking to hire somebody for a marketing role, we no longer just have to look in, downtown London, if we have an office, or Chicago or wherever. We can look anywhere in the world and find the best person for our company, wherever they're living, which is a huge benefit. And then you look at productivity, you look at the ability of the team to make a decision quickly rather than having to fly all over and meet somewhere and deal with jet lag and have a meal, and how expensive that could be and time consuming. Now you can make a decision very quickly. And then I think you need to look at the retention of valuable associates, people who are excited to be working for the company, who maybe are a younger generation but get the work done. If you don't provide them the kind of tools and flexibility that they need, they're going to look elsewhere.
But there is no getting around the fact that leadership today is more complicated, because you have virtual teams, you have flexible teams, you have teams from around the world. So that's tough on leadership, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's a privilege of leadership. I think the challenges of leadership just change and evolve over time, right? So a senior leader from 50 years ago, before globalization was a thing, would have think, oh no, I've got my hands full, and then things have shifted over a period of time. And I think one of the key challenges of leadership today is you cannot assume anymore. So I think previously you had the privilege of assuming my staff will do as I tell them, right? They're going to operate in this way. I've said they need to do it in this way, and they will do that. Whereas in today's market, that is not the case. It is much more of, okay, how are you going to facilitate your team members to produce their best work because they want to, right? Because they've got so many options, so many choices to go elsewhere and do other things, that you have to be more of a facilitator rather than, okay, I'm giving down some orders, off you go. And then also the other part of it is, because business is moving so fast, we need our people to be thinking, so we need them to be learning and changing and adapting. So we need them to be proactively finding new opportunities, new ways of working, rather than waiting for me to say, this is the new way. We need them to be adapting.
And we've spoken a lot about the onus on the leadership, and maybe you were getting to that in the final part of your answer, but what's the responsibility of the employee in this situation? What's their responsibility?
So I think there's a number. So one of the responsibilities is we are part of a team. So that employee is part of a team to help the team achieve its goals. So in my business, that is serving insurance for our customers and making sure that our customers are being well taken care of. So everybody is part of that effort to make that happen. So if you're an engineer in one of my teams, or if you're in the call center, that is our end goal, serving our customers. And I think for lots of employees today, they want to be bought into that vision. So some might say, actually, that's not where I want to get my value from. I want to do something more creative in another area, or something that they perceive as more valuable in a different area too. So I think as an employee, as part of that team or that organization, you're bought into that vision. And I think that is more and more of a thing over time.
Cathryn, same question.
Yeah, well, I think for me, trust is mutual, and if either side kind of abuses that, then that breaks down and so forth. So I think there's an expectation, an obligation on employees to respect the fact that we're trying to do things differently and not monitor them and not this and t'other and perform in a different environment. I think the technology helps. We used to kind of say, I go to work and I leave my brain outside the door kind of thing. I have these amazing skills that organisations don't make use of. Now, actually, you've got the tools that you can. Now it's your choice as to whether you do that. An organisation can facilitate it, but actually it's up to the individual to say, actually, I can bring more to the party and I'm going to bring more. So I think that's another responsibility.
And as a non-executive director, you see a range of organisations doing things presumably well and doing things badly. What are some of the things that organisations are doing well? What do you observe?
So I think the first thing is, as with many things, it comes from the top. So organisations are shadows of their leaders. I believe that firmly. I've seen that. So I think tone from the top, actions from the top, behaviours from the top. That's what really drives to whether that cascades down.
And if it's from the top, presumably most of those people at the top are not millennial
Yeah.
demographic. So they're having to learn this stuff that may feel unnatural to them.
Yes, without a doubt. And that's quite uncomfortable for some. But also, even if you're not very good at it, you can facilitate an environment where people flourish. Okay, that's your job as a leader. Not actually always doing the doing and so forth. Sometimes it's about creating an environment through, as you say, the things you do, the systems with small s that you enforce or not, the sort of people that you bring in, the sort of environment, the sort of tone of communications, all those kind of things, how visible you are, how approachable you are and so forth. So those kind of things, I think you can learn those. You're never too old to learn, right? I have to believe that.